406. Reading half military, half like that. You're good.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. This is the Safe Homes and Neighborhood Committee. Today is December 18th. Myself, Lynn Carson, along with Councilmember Ed Overby from Ward 7 are in attendance, and Emily Falco from Ward 8 is excused. Ed, did you have anything about the minutes that were provided for our previous meeting of November 20th?
I'm good with the minutes.
I was also on. Mayor, you saw the agenda, so I'm going to assume you might want to chime in on this.
Sure, as you roll through, sure.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of talk about, we're all going to be here, what we can and what we can't do in the limited amount of time that we have. But I guess as I keep looking at the mayor and thinking that, well, Ed, you're not going to be here, and I'm actually not sure whether Emily and I are going to be on this committee either. So this might actually be
the first of the year.
Yeah, because the first year with the new council coming in. So am I to assume that Emily and I would stay on this committee, Mayor?
Yeah, I think there's likely to need to be in these next week and change some recalibration. I think it's really important. I think, yes, Emily and you, Len, would absolutely be a part of this, but I think we need to take a look to see how we wind up engaging the community that is not currently engaged. Because without that, if I had 8 council members on this committee, it wouldn't be enough folks to make what we need to have happen. So I think we'll have some dialogue between now and the time we roll around to the beginning of next year in terms of what we need to do.
Yeah, and I think I said the last meeting, and it's part of what I wanted to talk about today, is I think probably one of the strongest relationships that we could continue fostering is that relationship with the county Health and Education Committee, and just having that open line of communication with them, finding out what's on their agenda, where they're headed, what their thoughts are for dealing with unsheltered homelessness, and then every aspect that goes with that. But also, as we've talked in previous meetings, after what you and I saw along with the DSS commissioner and her deputy, the way that Rescue Mission of Utica is doing it, setting up a campus, and is the county really, is that what they're headed towards doing? And if so, how is it that we can help facilitate?
Right.
But probably for me, the one key point that this committee could really hone in on, rather than say community wellness, is this ID deficiency. And this is a national issue that folks that find themselves in this position, they lose or their identity is stolen. And it really opened up my eyes of what they got to go through just to make that happen without having a mailing address. And so the last meeting that I attended for Caring for the Homeless, I brought this up, and one of the not-for-profits is stepping up and saying, well, let's use our mailing address as the address of record and start helping these people start getting an identity. And so I think for us in this subcommittee, that's a great place to start, is identifying which agencies can or cannot help in getting their ID, because if you can't get government services because you don't have a valid ID, well then you're at a standstill and you're not getting past go. I mean, it's literally, after going to the Purdue office and start talking with some of the clients and finding out that that is a fact for them, that once they lose that, it's a major hurdle for them to go through. If we took a walk into some of the green spaces that we have here in our city and we started a conversation, I'm sure that's what we'll find is folks that have difficulty trying to obtain government services because they don't have a valid ID. So for me, I thought that would be a great place for us to start figuring out which agencies can and cannot help, and then who is actually interfacing with these different folks coming in. I think Catholic Charities is a great place to start also, because right now, they're seeing probably the most of these folks because it's cold. So the cold is driving them in from the green space, and they're going to the warming shelter on Chestnut Street, and it's allowing Catholic Charities an opportunity to collect data. So giving credit to Ed, he had sent a newspaper article to the committee members, and I not only read it, but found in there that there was an agency called the United States Interagency Council for Homelessness. And I went to their website, and they have created a new agenda that just came out November 30th. And on their agenda, they're trying to hit not only federal but non-federal agencies or entities at local, state, and federal to participate in collecting data. I don't know if it's a futile exercise, but at least it's something that we can keep track of and help us move forward. But you know, we're down to, a good synopsis is that we're down to the warming station. We're also down to Motel 88, and the two places that are really getting hit here in the city of Oneonta. I believe the budget end is still saying folks come in from the county, and also Crossroads, which I'm sure, Mark, you got the email from Crossroads. They're seeing a little bit of a shift in leadership.
And what about the OFO shelter?
To me, they're not looking at homelessness. They have folks that have specific needs and meet criteria, and they go there. The folks that, you know, our committee is really charged with is, you know, the homelessness and how many subdivisions are there out of the homelessness. So wrapping our arms around their cause, their needs, is really the essence of what we've been looking at.
So what I would say, just to put my own spin on it a little bit, is that what you've identified here, and there'll be other things that will present themselves that came of the conversation that had happened at the previous meeting, where that need for some sort of a workaround for IDs became so clarifying for everybody here, myself included, because of the testimony of the individual that was in the gallery. So this group, this committee, will be presented with these, I don't want to marginalize or make them any less important than they are, but kind of describable as potentially, you know, the low-hanging fruit. Here's something that we know we can do, you know, that this group, you know, can wrap their arms around and maybe make
At a local level.
At a local level.
Absolutely, because
Right.
It was mind-boggling to me that nobody, out of the folks that are working this already before we got here, that they haven't really identified these steps. And so if that's something that this committee can identify.
I think yeah, so just, so
It's not just, sorry, I'm a little disagreeing there, Mark, is that it's not just low-hanging fruit, that's actually would catapult these people
Yes.
from being unsheltered to being sheltered, because if they can't get the government services, then.
I'm not demeaning it, and I'm not marginalizing it. I'm not in any way talking about its value. It's extremely valuable. I think we saw what I'm saying is something that this committee has the ability to say, having identified something, this is something that we can attack and potentially, without having to, you know, go through a larger process with a lot of other people, actually see some mitigation of, or even potentially some genuine success for our attacking it with focus. What I would suggest, though, is that there are these 5 other components that are huge. They're huge. From, you know, we've had a couple of, or one rather, there'll be another one scheduled soon, where the police chief is presenting this Citizens Academy piece, which is allowing people, yes, so giving people, and that'll be expanded to include resources and so forth, and potentially handouts that people can, you know, take and use. But this is, you know, enhancing that whole situational awareness piece, which is, you know, part of that safe neighborhoods piece.
Mm-hmm.
so important. There's that piece, that SEPTA piece that you would actually kind of, you had volunteered that you might want to be involved in that on the
Yeah.
other side of things, which is taking a look at our infrastructure and seeing what we need to do with that. That will make it, that will have it be an assist to the larger purposes here. The idea of finding a congregate space, working with the county in a very, close and very, collaborative way to be able to identify a place and identify the services that need to be moved, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things still are out there as huge tasks, and huge tasks that will require people being brought to this in a way that they currently are. So on the one hand, the committee's got this role of being directive and coordinating, and on the other hand, there are going to be some things that present themselves within the context of something that maybe get brought up in gallery or research that might get done, where you can say this committee in and of itself, separate and apart from these 5 other charges, can make a difference.
Right.
So I don't see it as a binary choice. I see it as things will present themselves if the committee knows that within its small infrastructure, you're going to be able to do something about and are able to take that on. But we still have these other charges that if we are successful with them, we will wind up making the difference that we need to make in the short period of time that we have to do that in.
Right, and that's why it's essential that we move forward with that relationship and strengthen it with the county health and education, because we don't have the infrastructure to build a campus. We don't have the location, we don't have the building, we don't have the financial means to support such an endeavor. The county actually does. So like a couple of these subcommittee groups, that's, their main focus is to see what services need to be relocated. Well, we don't actually have that ability to relocate them. And so that's why I keep directing. I'm not subjugating any of these committees. I'm just recognizing our ability as a small city compared to the larger county, and what we can and cannot do, especially when it comes to writing the checks.
Yeah, very much like the Community Wellness Committee, where the Community Wellness Committee does not have the capacity to be engaging in things like feeding our, our at-risk population that are food insecure. But they can be a coordinating body. In fact, they are beginning to become the same story as you were at the summit early on that the Community Wellness Committee did, where they began to identify the gaps and the overlaps, and found themselves in a role of being more of a coordinating entity rather than taking on the charge themselves.
Sheriff putting all the players in the same room at the same time was monumental. The fact that was the first time that had ever happened was kind of disappointing, but also good at this point that it happened. But what's happened since that 18 months ago, 20 months ago, whatever it was, definitely involving community members is a plus. But myself, I went from having, say, 20, 25 people in the 5th Ward saying, yes, absolutely, I want to help, when it was really noisy at Motel 88, to where now the county has implemented that accountability that we were looking for. So we have probationary department is there on a regular basis. The motel owner, business owner is now actively engaged in keeping those folks that are clients in a more organized manner. I mean, I think we're in our 6th week of enjoying it being quiet.
You gotta think that stirring the pot is what caused that. I'm not sure that they'd be getting that kind of service over there if this committee hadn't come into existence.
Well, it's not just this committee. I'm not patting myself. I say this humbly, but it was the only council member that went up to the county and said, please don't do this, and this is the reason why. And it riled up the Health and Education Committee. So now we have an opportunity to strengthen that relationship, and I think that's important, is instead of trying to go against each other, let's work with them and find out what they're up to, what they're going to be doing. I mean, they're in the same boat as we are, So Mark, I just want to kind of stay here today. I didn't want to get down in the weeds too much because I don't recognize that you're in charge of the committee, whether it stays, whether the membership stays, the county is the same way. They have the same reorganizational structure up there, so, I just didn't want to get into the weeds, and I just wanted to stay kind of here. Also, I want to avoid at all costs any overlay with the Community Wellness Committee. And so, at this point, do you see any overlay? I kind of see the overlay, but.
Well, you know, when you get to 30,000 feet, it's all, right?
Yeah.
So
We start drilling
yeah,
down.
exactly right. And that was one of the rationale for creating 5 distinct charges for this committee. So to kind of understanding that there's always going to be overlap, that you minimize that, and that you have then attendance I appreciate seeing you here, Katie, attendance both from the Community Wellness Committee to this, and then from the Safe Homes and Neighborhoods Committee to Community Wellness. So there's that conversation that's going on, and then things that are identifiable as more likely in the purview of one or the other, you know, before people wind up stepping on one another's, you know, proverbial toes.
Sure.
We're able to, you know, to ensure that, you know, we're working more seamlessly.
One reason I'm really anxious for us to get more of the NGO and faith-based social services groups involved is there's another piece of low-hanging fruit that I can't pronounce his name from Catholic Services. Catholic Charities.
I mean,
Yeah. I have to see it written. I don't know him well enough to know him by name. Anyway, he brought up the fact that the jail lets people out at 12:01 without making any sort of arrangements for them to be anywhere once they set foot out the door. And that seems like it could be low-hanging fruit if we can bring it up with the NGO and faith-based community and get some kind of, since the jail is not doing pre-release, putting together a pre-release plan, then the jail ministries and the jail, the NGOs that either go into the jail or will go into the jail could do that separate from the government and make sure that there's transportation there at 12:01 when somebody steps out the door.
So
They have a
especially if
place
it's
to go.
somebody that had been incarcerated for a while, it seems that gives you more leeway to make contact with whether it's a not-for-profit agency or the government agency.
Yeah,
But I don't know if these lists are actually created. I don't know if there's a contact list for the sheriff's department to actually call this or set up policies and procedures. That I don't know. Again, that's a county agency, and again, that's why I keep going back to strengthen that relationship with Health and Education Committee at the county level, because frankly, I don't know what their set of protocols are for the sheriff's department. I mean, obviously, it seems like by Hamid's testimony that that's what they do. They guide them to the front door and.
yeah, and so what I would suggest is probably that second, again, you know, this is all way too much for 3 people, 5 people, whatever it may be, you know, that are here, you know, meeting regularly. It winds up, you need to have a group of people who you can say, take this and come back to us with, now, we don't know if there's a list, find out if there's a list, what needs to be done with this list, how does it get augmented, you know, how does it get refined, how can we, you know, digitize it, how can we make it, you know, more user accessible, you know, and, you know, digitally, you know, and that shouldn't be on this group. That's where this group right here is identifying.
Sure,
That's
it's like
that's the
IDs,
need.
it's not
That's the
us
need.
to figure out the
That's
problem,
right.
it's us to see the problem and say, okay, you do this and you do
Right.
this.
You know, which is why, again, you need to have that group that you can
Right.
say, do this.
But we've also
That's
in
what-
an agreement that we recognize by the lack of participation is that a lot of these groups are overworked, overtaxed, and the fact that they have so many commitments. And I think that has a lot of explanation of why tonight we've gone from having 5, 6, 7, 8 people in attendance to these meetings, and now we're So,
Yeah, and part of it is.
and I get the time of year, right, so.
Yeah, well, it's true too, but part of it is too, nobody has time to go to a meeting that doesn't provide them a sense that action is taking place, right? Especially folks that are the people that you need to have involved. So they need to be involved in a capacity that they know within the context of what they're being tasked with and the players that they're surrounded by, that they're going to be able to make progress, and that there is a support structure within the context of the city government that's going to wind up being able to enable them through, a coordination with the county and with the various service agencies and with the faith-based community and others. And that it's not just a city or town, but it's a county and even regional issue where we bring together all those resources. But because we're the city, we have this, we have this ability to say, we're the city, we are the coordinating body, and people will let us kind of get away with that. Because there needs somebody to step up and be that, support, group. So that's the charge of this committee, is to, there'll be, I'm sorry I even used the term low-hanging fruit, but there will be things that will be identifiable as something that this committee can do something about themselves. But more to the point is, here's what we need to have done. We don't have the time for it, but you 6 people or 8 people, whatever it might be, a combination of people who are self-identified as wanting to help, and people who are experts, who are, tasked with this in their daily lives, are in combination. It's funny. Not only went to my ear, but it also went to my butt. So
What do we have?
new operating system.
What do we
Well,
have
again,
in
that's
town
gonna-
at the time?
It's gonna change.
Committee.
So those 4 are gonna change. So after the first year, once the county has their organizational meeting, we'll find out who's on what committee.
Mhm.
And then I was actually gonna volunteer myself to go to the health and ed meeting and just lay the groundwork, make the introduction, lay the groundwork, and say, hey, how can we help? Because these are the tasks that we're looking at.
That's right.
It's not just the jail release, it's, is there a conversation about starting a new campus where all of the services are in one location? So when folks come into Otsego County, they're directed to this location to get the services that they so desire.
Mhm.
And how can we help facilitate that? From as simple as, for the last 20 years, we've allowed folks to get released at midnight, from being incarcerated, and we don't have that set up yet. So I think those are the challenges that we're gonna have, and I think if we stay dynamic in our cause, I just don't want us to become stagnant also.
Well, that's it. I think your first charge is it continues to be that first charge, which is organizationally, that there is a robust membership of people who are, they know, essentially what they volunteered for. So, and again, where's the overlap? There's always gonna be overlap, always gonna be overlap. But and that's what this group's charge is to be that oversight committee, essentially. That is the directive committee. That's the committee that's, providing, the distinction for one group or another, that they don't see a line between one person's purview, one group's purview and another's, that you take this, and when you're done with it, come back to us with it, and then, it needs to go someplace else, we'll make that decision.
Do we know who's in charge of each one of these 5 subcommittees?
There aren't 5. I mean, we have it on paper, but as
Yeah.
best as I know, we don't have anything.
No, because from a summit, we had very few
Right.
volunteers.
Right.
So I think it gives us an opportunity to look at it and say, okay, to your point, the educational piece is you're kind of putting that on Chris, and he's gonna get that information out, once a quarter, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I'm not even putting, I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't mean to be contradictory, but it's not really on Chris, because he's got, on the chief, he's got so much on his plate now anyway.
Okay.
So really, what it comes down to is we have, half a dozen folks that understand that charge. And there is, my God, there's so much bleed through the community police board and so forth, so on, relative to that. But nonetheless, you have this, group of active individuals that are your core, and the chief winds up being the presenter in chief, generally speaking, but that is not that he's not tasked with it, he's not tasked with and there's more to it than just his presentations. I mentioned the fact that maybe it makes sense that people who are in attendance to something where they're learning about, what the police can do, can't do, what they can do and can't do, that they're maybe provided with some resources that currently haven't even been gathered together. Someone within that larger group will need to be, charged with that, with the expectation what they're doing is educating the community around the safety and security of the neighborhoods, generally speaking, as they're impacted by our unsheltered population.
I have to apologize, I have to put my hat on so I can see. I'm sorry.
No worries. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
I thought we had sort of a roster of people that had volunteered and self-identified, and
We had a group of names and emails we pushed out, and then now we're down to maybe revisiting a half dozen to about a half dozen volunteers.
Yeah.
So, Mark said, this is the expectation, I guess.
I thought there were people at that summit that raised their hands and said, I want to.
There were,
There's a few.
but I have to tell you that a number of them have contacted me and said, so? The nature of people volunteering, everyone's so busy, and after the pandemic, people, quite honestly, have, so many of them are still kind of in this place where they got comfortable during the pandemic, and it takes a lot to draw them out. So when they volunteer, they want to get put to work right away. And there hasn't been a lot of correspondence. And so there's been, a sense that this isn't a real thing. This isn't really something that's happening. And of course, if you have somebody who's energized and then you unplug them, it takes a while to get them energized again.
Oh.
So we want to make certain that if we're going to gather people together, that, we have all of the players, that, individuals need to be contacted via email, via phone, via, in-person visits to, all the people that we had talked about who are the key players who are doing this for a living, who don't have the time, but here's what we're offering you, the city's support and a group of people who will work with you to identify a very specific thing. You've got all these other things just as overwhelming as what we're talking about here, they're trying to do a million different things. So if they can have a focus and move the ball forward a little bit, they're gonna get some level of satisfaction out of that, certainly, knowing so many of them, I can tell you that's the case. And that will help then those people who have, volunteered, raised their hands and said, I wanna help, that will empower them as well and keep them, invested. Not all of them, because that's just not the way it works. But,
And I understand people are gonna come off the
Yeah,
fray,
that's right.
but we recognized that there was 2, maybe 3 that had volunteered. We, as a committee, said we were looking at 5 to 7. So we were trying to strengthen that in numbers. Personally, I haven't been contacted by anybody. I've received no emails or phone calls.
The mayor,
So you're getting shouldered with that. So, you can direct them my way, but that's what we had decided last month is we wanted to firm this up more. And so recognizing that at minimum, you're targeting 25, then you've got to get somebody that wants to be the leader of that subcommittee or ad hoc committee. And so that's not easy. People want to volunteer, but they don't want to be on the front of it either.
Right.
So.
And they, in the moment, they want to volunteer until you
Sure.
start talking about the fact it's going to require that they actually go to meetings.
Correct. Welcome Home Committee is a great
Yes.
eye-opener for me.
Any number.
We started off with 30, then got to 35.
And you find yourself with a core group.
And it's 5 of us.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, we'll reconvene in January, and hopefully you're bringing back Mr. Overby in some capacity.
You know it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Oh, let me, before we shut down, did you already?
No.
Okay, so Chris Stoner, owns the Country, what's it called? Country Living with a K, bed and breakfast, just as you go on the, 28, 23, and you kind of make your way as if you're going to Old South Side. So he's, Country Living Bed and Breakfast is over there. Maybe he's off to the right, actually, now I'm thinking about it. But nonetheless, that's where he is. And he's looking to convert his bed and breakfast to something similar to what is being done on a larger scale in Otsego by the Crossroads Inn. And he's looking for whatever support he may be able to get. I've connected him up via email with, and I think with you guys as well. I think I might have sent that email to you guys.
What's his name again?
Chris Dorner, Doerner.
And Country Living Bed and Breakfast?
Yeah. So he's looking to see if he can convert for the next couple of years his bed and breakfast to a place that will be accommodating to those who are at risk unsheltered.
How many do you think he can?
I guess he's got probably 5 rooms, I think, last time I was in there. So it would be a smaller than certainly the Crossroads, but it'd be something.
Right.
And he's anxious to.
Has he reached out to them to?
Yeah, so I connected him with DSS and with Noel, and with Patricia Leonard, thank you. And, well, they just, I don't know if I look at you, but yeah, anyway, so I've connected him with several of the key players. I thought I had passed that along to you
I'm
guys,
gonna go back
but
and
maybe I
look.
didn't.
Must have.
I got it.
Did you? Yeah, so anyways, that's good news, is that there are people who are, he's entrepreneurial too. He's looking at, there's a guaranteed income generation, but also understands that there's a need.
So can he provide the services like the people at Crossroads do?
Yeah, I think he's literally in that place right now where he's trying to get this piece figured out. So, again, hooked him up with DSS, hooked him up with Catholic Charities, now that I'm thinking about it, with both Jen and Christy, and with, as I said, Patricia, and whomever else. So anyway, it's just good news. I wanted to make certain in this venue that I pass that along.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the one thing I'd like to mention before we go, and that is that I was wondering if it wouldn't be advantageous for us to schedule for us to participate with community health and community wellness on the summits that involve the social services organizations, the NGOs, and the faith-based. That way, we've got to know that those people are busy, and if we're scheduling a summit and then
Correct.
wellness is scheduling a summit, all they see is we're getting 2 tasks from the city, whereas if we do it jointly,
Exactly, you don't want to be
they
replicating.
don't feel like they're being bombarded by it.
It doesn't send a good signal.
So maybe that's something we can coordinate with them.
Okay.